Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and talk about the Babadook then, because I know the Babadook better than Heredity, and the Babadook actually won a shit ton of awards, but not a big Oscar. You know what I mean? Not a big nomination. And again, you know what? Sci-fi films are still struggling with getting an Oscar. Comic book movies are still struggling with getting an Oscar. I mean, like them or not, I mean, the comic book films are the most revolutionary thing in the 21st century. Like, you have to do something. What do? Just open up to 10 movies, also none of them comic book films, so whatever. But the Babadook, the look of it, the style of it, and that, again, sense of dread, you know, bringing children in. Children are creepy. You know, they're creepy little creatures. You don't know what to take seriously from them, and you don't know what to not take seriously from children. And so it also has that feeling of being a confused parent, you know, having this child who seems to be out of touch. You know, where are you going to, what would you do in that spot? And that becomes that sense of dread, because you're somewhere in between wanting to do what's best for your child and this real danger that's lurking, which, you know, again, as a parent, is just what you deal with. You know, like, where do you draw that line between hearing them and keeping them safe? And then enter Monster, which is the most original movie monster I'd seen in a long time to that point. And the style that they chose to make him, to create this character, I thought was beautiful. Beautiful. If you like that style, if you are into that kind of just jarring sort of a stark, dark, charcoal black kind of visuals, you know, this was a perfect film for that, you know. But it's pretty low key, you know what I mean? Like, the cast is not huge. It's not something that, you know, required a hell of a lot of CGI or, you know, waves of blood or anything like that. But a brilliant movie, an absolutely brilliant movie. The Babadook, highly recommend it. And I want to go for a movie fail, and I hope that somebody decides to make this movie. But Krampus, they did Krampus wrong, damn it. There was a lot of possibilities, and Krampus, I was waiting for a good Krampus film finally, because, again, as you know, a Catholic, you know what, I can't, something about me, you know, just people being happy during the holidays, it's wrong. It's wrong. It's just wrong. Like, you're not supposed to be happy when he died for your sins. No happiness for you, period. And so just bringing Krampus into the mainstream with Santa, who's, you know, a judgy asshole. You know, you're over here like children, no choice. You know, you're born into whatever economic standing you are. And so you may have done some bad things, but you know what? Your family's got to eat, Santa. You judgy dick. You know, so Krampus being on, you know, the same plateau as Santa, I thought it was about time for that to happen. But the Krampus film wasn't that great. I think it was PG-13. It should not have been. Yeah, there should have been a lot more. It should have been just a lot more as far as getting into the past and the traditions and the fact that people love Krampus. You know, yeah, when people go out and celebrate Krampus, they celebrate Krampus. Yeah, so they do. Yeah, they do, and it's fucking fantastic, you know. So that's going to be my final shot. But the movie that definitely should have gotten an Oscar without question would be The Babadook.
Well, for those of you just joining us, I'd like you to welcome you to the Steam Gentlemen, the only podcast on the airwaves where you can hear the words spoken in all seriousness. I was waiting for a good Krampus film. That is, we know where this is the only place you're going to hear it. That's a good call. It's an interesting.
Streaming? Did you say for those of us just joining us?
Yeah, having a little fun with it. You know, maybe we'll be able to put together an event someday. But guy can dream. It was interesting that you went with the Krampus. I just love it. My father-in-law was raised in Switzerland, in a valley that got, in the wintertime, it probably got daylight between 2 and 4 hours a day. as a subsistence farmer and a very devout Catholic. I don't know if they had, he would describe some of the traditions around Christmas, which was not, of course, he immigrated to Canada and to the West, and it was certainly not this bevy of consumerism that we have now. But he didn't describe Krampus, but he described Santa's two helpers that if they showed up, they would show up to your house, and if your parents said you were being a little shit, they would throw you in a bag and beat you. Okay, yeah. So as you say, this true story. True story, exactly. This idea of Christmas time being this happy holiday is certainly a new advent, without a doubt. Did just want to throw in my my unsolicited 2 cents. The Babadook, loved it. Great pick. I viewing it through my own lens, and this is for my own lens only, but I think there'll be some people out there, a listener or two. I have a child with special needs. My oldest is is a high functioning on the autism spectrum. So I found that such a wonderful and true metaphor, as you said, for being a parent with a child with special needs, and especially that first feeling when you're first given that news. There is that sense of dread. There is that sense of I'm not prepared for this, and what does this mean? And all of these fears that mix in for your child's future. So I just loved it. It took it to a much darker place, of course. And I'm not trying to say that, definitely not trying to say anything about being on the autism spectrum, but it took it to that darkest place. But I just love the way they weave that metaphor through. And it kind of goes through the whole idea of what I'm calling new horror, the Babadook, Hereditary, The Witch. These are all really good films to check out. It Follows. They're all, I won't go into all of them, but it's just all that idea of our modern fears again, but also usually leaving it up to the mind of the viewer of, is it really happening, or is it just the mental instability of the characters on the screen that you're seeing? And it's not necessarily a question you're ever going to answer. Sometimes some people feel it's answered, some people feel it's not, but that's that open-ended part of the artwork. Like you mentioned before with Romero, not really wanting to take ownership of the message, right? He kind of, doesn't want to put that hard a definition on it.
And I didn't want to say that entirely because, I think that they're being cowards or anything like that. No. But as an artist, as a creator, you do want to leave room for people to have their experience with something. Absolutely. Like if that's not the way you want to read it, but you totally dig it. Okay, that's absolutely fine. You're allowed to do that. But, when they come out and say that, it's like, okay, when people turn around and say it's political, you can't argue with that either.
Right.
You have to take that too, because you're saying you're not going to nail it down. So if I say, okay, then since you haven't nailed it down, I'm going to go ahead and say it's political. Right. You kind of have to eat that too.
Yeah, that's the beauty of it. The best songs you ever hear are kind of those ones that hit you in a personal way and remind you of a personal event in your life that the songwriter never could have had in mind when they were writing the song.
Oh, absolutely. My one, there was can't remember the name of the song by the I think the Cranberries, and you didn't give a damn. That was like part of the chorus, right? And I remember I was at a dive bar in Providence, and there was this hooker named Candy, and she was
because of course there was,
because there always is. There's always a Candy, and she went on this beautiful soliloquy about how much that part of that song meant to her, and the point of the song she had gotten 100% wrong. And I wanted to correct her, but that's when I realized, I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter to this aging hooker in her dingy sweatshirt and tits hanging down to her waistline. This song said something that resonated with her, and what it actually meant didn't matter. She liked maybe, 10% of the words of the song. But when you're having that personal experience with a piece of artwork, that's what matters the most.
Well,
it is. That's what matters the most.
To that, well, Candy, we wish you well. We hope you're getting whatever you needed out of that song and getting your happily ever after.
She did not.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear.
But kind of you to say, but she.
Well, you know, we were doing our best to, you know, give a little hope for the horror movie genre today. But with that, let me see what the old heel turn's going to bring out here. He's over there on the ropes. He's warming up. He's getting ready to jump on in. Maybe agree, maybe not. Maybe bring the old clothesline. How you doing today, Three of Clubs? What's going on?
What's going on is I'm pretty sure all Greg just did was took the lyrics of Jane Says and just like replaced a couple of names and then put it as its own. I heard that story before, man. It's one of my favorite songs. Like you can't run that past me, man. I mean, we're all done with Sergio, but I think a lot of what we're identifying is at its root and its core, the problem with why horror movies don't get Oscars in a lot of different ways. So one thing is the problem starts with one, what actually qualifies for an Oscar. Obviously, there's widely varying opinions and views, but the fact of the matter is whether we like it or not, there is some real objective standards that seem to be consistent with all the movies that have been able to win Oscars. Yes, we all like those movies, or if not love them. In some ways, it's iconic for a lot of different people. It has emotional resonance with a lot of different people. It makes sense to a certain point, but then you have to then try to argue what is that point of view. And once again, it comes back to, because that is in fact the shape of this country at current, it comes back to a very specific white point of view. And it's not a matter of, I know people are going to hear that and be like, oh, it's racial and all that. It's like, how about you just grow the fuck up and understand what reality is? Because of that, it's very hard to then break out of those norms. There is a certain sort of standard when you look at all the movies that these movies fall into, no different than like in the Grammys, up until very recent, anything that was considered rap, not surprising that a Macklemore would win. It falls under these very safe sort of constraints and checkpoints. Or like, I watch a lot of football. I grew up playing it. So like in college football, why the Heisman tends to always be the quarterback, even though it's supposed to be the best player. So the hardest part starts with that. Then it comes down to the next part, which is what exactly is horrific or causes those emotions to a person, which frankly, to be fair to Oscars, that's kind of hard to settle on. We can all talk about Get Out, but I argue that the scariest part for most Black people watching that movie was at the end when the cops showed up. Because that was the moment where every single one was like, oh, fuck, dude's dead. Like, he made it all the way through that just to get fucking shot at the end. That fucking, I mean, that's good, Jordan Peele. That's some horror shit right there. Like, up until then, I was just laughing. It was kind of comedic in a lot of different ways, at least for me. I sort of watched it like a comedy. All the way up until the cop showed up and it's like, fuck, dude's dead. Or we can dip into like, what is a horror movie supposed to do? What emotions are it supposed to convey and invoke? We all, I think there's a reason why a lot of times best pictures tend to fall into the same genre, is because you can argue that all the people who settle on what the Oscars should be can at least agree on, oh yes, I felt that romance, or I felt that sense of longing, or I felt, all these different things, the reasons why Frances McDormand is like the de facto winner for Best Actor. It's just like, she does all these things that they all check off on. So it's easier for them to agree on that versus like in horror, as I just pointed out, what is scary, and then also what emotions are we supposed to be agreeing on, so we can check off from movie to movie to subjectively say, did you reach this mark or not? That is really hard to do. I mean, it's funny. I watch a lot of American Horror Story. One of the plots that they have in one of their mini series that's out now is that this film producer is, and this is going to a point that both you guys made,